All right, welcome back. This is a Evolution of Love segment. And, with this one, it's all about speaking about love, right? It's all about relationships, how we evolve from relationships. I've done two episodes thus far for the Evolution of Love series, one that I did by myself, and then one that I did with the amazing Dr. J. Today, I have a few panel guests to come through from the Healing Squad. And, part of this conversation is love after letdown, y'all. Loving people is such a sweet thing. It's so amazing to love someone, but it's so hard to be let down by love. Heartbreak, betrayal, lack of trust, right? There's so many layers to it. And today I have three amazing guests from the Healing Squad to bless us with some gems, to give some advice, right? Because this one is all about advice. This is all about giving you some tangible resources because we know that everybody love and going through relationships and breakups, that is a universal problem no matter what color you are. So in this one, take these gems in, take this advice in, but more importantly, with the guests that I have today, I have, of course, Bryan, who's one of our new Healing Squad members, who dropped a gang of gems on that Heal Talk segment that we did about going through overcoming you, versions of you. Thank you, Bryan, for dropping the gems. We have Mr. Easy Equity in the building as well, of course, as always, bringing the gems. And we have Ruth Tea Time with Rue in the building. Thank y'all. Come on to the space. Y'all know the topic, love after letdown, right? How we build this relationships, community, self, all that great stuff. We have a few questions lined up, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. And anybody who wants to jump in, feel free to go with your answers and give some advice. But of course, once again, y'all welcome. Thank y'all for being in the space. And I'm going to go with this first one. How can someone tell the difference between protecting their peace and unintentionally isolating themselves while working to restore trust? Now, we're talking on trust on this one. Who wants to touch on it first?
Wow, that's a good question. I didn't think I wasn't expecting that one. Um, Protecting your peace is, to me, that's equity. Um, I define equity as love for self, love for others, and love for humanity. And oftentimes, when you're in a relationship, uh, a relationship with turbulence, if you don't have peace, you don't have anything because nothing can truly move forward. And how I treat me matters. So my peace, um, my peace matters. So like I think in the previous segment we talked about boundaries. And the more you set boundaries, like I'm gonna start I said before, every time you say yes to somebody else, you say no to yourself. So by protecting my peace, I'm saying yes to me. I'm going to create a boundary. And I think the key part of this, of like protecting your peace and creating that boundary, is not feeling guilty about it. It's okay to love you in a relationship. Honestly, most relationships, in my opinion, falter because people lose their identity. You start loving the person more than you loving yourself. So what you think you're giving this person really is scraps because you haven't been pouring into yourself. You haven't evolved yourself. You're not growing. So protecting my peace and creating boundaries away from me to center myself, center my growth so I can be more intentional with the relationship that I'm in.
Yeah, protecting your peace is definitely important. And I'm like, so right now in my life, I am at the stage of life where I'm dealing with all that parenting and childhood trauma. Mhm. I'm 30 years old. I'm starting to look at my parents. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? You know, I'm not the little kid no more. You're not the same person. You getting old. I'm like, I can help you, but you're gonna have to pipe down a little bit. And a big thing with that is, especially when life throws you situations where you can't really opt out of, right? You have to do kind of give yourself the mental break of peace. You know, you have to be able to just, in certain situations, be able to either sometimes even disassociate, but also take a break from that stressor in your life. But it's something you have to deal with. I think taking breaks are so important, especially when you still have to love this person that has probably hurt you, or you still have to love this person that you don't trust. And in those situations, I always take a break because sometimes that's the only thing you can do.
Uh, Adam, you came with a tough question right out the gate. Um, protecting, trying to protect your peace while not isolating sometimes can be hard because you want to isolate yourself from people who have mishandled you. So instead of being in their presence, you rather just back away from them. But sometimes backing away from them, it puts a lot of distance when sometimes you can try to mend it. And like Bryan said, like giving yourself time and space for yourself. And as Mike said, like creating those boundaries for yourself and loving yourself and saying yes to you and no to them, but understanding that your peace does matter, but also their feelings do too. But how can I trust you now after the trust has been broken? It's going to take some time, it's going to take some work, and we have to come together. We have to have a median where we can have a coming of the minds to have a conversation of what took place so that both of us can be at peace with what has taken place.
Ruth, can I add? I think like looking at this question again, it's like, what is isolating? Like, because I think being really intentional, if your partner saying you're isolating yourself, what's their definition and your definition? Because me creating distance, you might be saying isolating, but if we talk about the last segment, you want me to go back to that fire, that old Mike Sykes, like I can. So my break, like Bryan said, is it's not just for me, it's for you too because I don't want to go back to that. Because if you get the fire, now I'm not happy because I broke my own trust now. I was becoming something and I broke it, so I'm mad at myself. Then I'm mad at what I said to you. Then you're upset about what I said to you. So it's just like I think this is where communication has to play a big part of relationships is to like name what you need. I need space so I can center myself. I can't have a rational thought right now because like the water's too cloudy right now. And so like I need to set that boundary and it's also doing the work, the proactive work of having emotional intelligence. You got to know how you respond to crises or arguments. And so you know that heart rate's up, you probably ain't gonna say the right thing. So you know you need to take space. So this is the work that you need to do before you get into those heated arguments, having a high emotional intelligence so you can be intentional with knowing how you feel and know how you react, how you feel, so you can create a plan when you start feeling that way.
That's some gems. It makes me think of a couple things. I look at this question almost like a two-parter, right? Because in the sense of like protecting your peace, I think part of me, I'll speak of myself when I'm protecting my peace, right? Like, and that my peace is mad important to me. I probably like put my peace on a level of where my children are obviously above in my family, but my peace is really close to all those people, right? And I think for me, when I'm protecting my peace, I am intentionally and unintentionally isolating myself. And I think that's okay. I think isolation, when it gets to a detriment, is when you're just shutting everybody off. When my wife is like, "Who are you?" Or my boys are like, "Where's dad?" Right? Like when I'm here, and like that to me is an isolation to detriment, right? I think there's I think isolation comes in levels. So when I think of that isolation, and I think of like the unintentionally, right? So I'm isolating myself, but not realizing it. But I think sometimes nervous system just shoots in and protects you, right? And your nervous system just takes over and says, "Hey, something's going on right here. You feeling? I think there's betrayal or something going on. Protect yourself." Your nervous system and your shit gets all aware, and you're like, "Oh, let me protect my peace. Let me protect my." And you know what? I have a mean, like in the last segment we talked a lot of basketball analogy. I'm gonna hit you with the football stiff arm. I got a mean stiff arm game, right? My protection of peace, people feel it because I put you at arm's length. And people know the difference between being within my space and what that feels like and what that arm's length feels like, right? And I feel like there's a grace for both sides. The protection of peace, you always got to protect yourself. Sometimes people protect themselves too much, and that becomes a detriment, right? But when I think of it, I look at it, I almost divide the question a little bit because I think there is a little bit of giving yourself grace to to unintentionally or intentionally isolate. But there's a limit to that, just like there's a limit to protecting your peace. How does that land for y'all? Do y'all agree? Do y'all disagree? It's okay if you disagree, as you know.
I agree. I definitely agree with what you're saying because there is a level of being intentional about isolating because yes, like Mike said, like you'll say some things that you wish that you never said because there's things you just can't take back. And you're also protecting your peace in those moments because you need to bring yourself down. I know for me, I'm at 1,000. And when I'm at 1,000, anything's about to fly out my mouth and it's gonna cut you. And I mean it's gonna cut you deep. There is no filter when I'm like in this space to where I am so angry at you and then my whole attitude changes towards you. I just give you these nonchalant answers. I give you these faces that you like, oh, she ain't talking to me. Absolutely not. I have nothing to say. And I'm just trying to bring myself down so I can get back into the peaceful Ruth. And I go into a quiet place in my mind, like a child. Let me just be a kid again to where I can just separate myself. But yes, it is two different things, protecting your peace and isolation. Sometimes, yes, regardless, you still have to separate those two. And regardless, you still have to allow yourself some grace to know that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to sit in the moment, and it's okay to say, right now is not the best time to talk.
And I also, when I hear the words like protect your peace and isolation sounds more of like the defensive mechanic, right? And protecting your peace sounds like the active, proactive, positive thing you're doing. Um, Mike had mentioned this before, like the emotional intelligence and even the emotional maturity of knowing what you're doing in that moment or even within that span of time that are you isolating, are you trying to avoid these difficult conversations, these difficult interactions, or are you protecting your peace and you're saving your energy to deal with those things? You're preserving energy to have to deal with those things the proper way. And that kind of framing I feel like is really important.
I love it. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. What are some ways people can rebuild trust with themselves after overlooking their own boundaries or staying too long in painful situations? And I see the eyes move, right? I see the reactions. So it sounds like this is a universal thing, right? This question all of us can feel. Uh, who would like to go first? Let's go.
Really, Ruth? Um, oh, that's a hell of a question, Adam. I'm a little mad at you because that's dang. Um, I think for me, what happened for me was I had to break myself down. I wasn't nice. And we talked about a brief cycle. I was angry, I was in denial. Then at some point, I had to, I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I see. it was gross. I was sexist, and when I say I'm sexist or had toxic male masculinity, like towards my daughter, towards my previous partner, towards like the people, or my mom, my sister, towards the people I love most, and like you're it's unconscious until it's conscious. And then once I had awareness and got beat myself up, to be honest, then I started to realize once I took a breath and started meditating and doing some other thing, like all that doesn't define me. And then I was like, oh, shoot. If you know better, you do better. And I was like, oh, Mike, you have a chance to be more. Because when you make all the mistakes and you have toxic male masculinity, you do all these things, the first things that come up is like, for me, was self-confidence. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of having a kids. I'm a terrible father. When you realize those things that you did in the past don't define who you are or who you can become, then your options widen. I'm like, oh shoot, everybody likes a comeback story. And I'm a hard worker, so I'm gonna have a comeback story. This is going, like, in a sense, I started becoming the main character in my story. And so then I started to put together what my new chapters were going to be. Because the first series or the first book or the first chapters was trash. I was trash. Admittedly so, because I didn't know who I was. And then once I found my sites, I kind of talked about getting back to the joy and everything else. I was intentional in how I poured into myself and how I viewed people, how I supported people in ways that they could receive. I actually listened and learned versus supporting people in the way that I wanted to support them in. Giving them amazing things that they didn't ask for, and then they responded. I was mad at them. I'm like, you ungrateful. I never asked for this, Mike. So then once I started to shed that skin, literally, like I started to become a new person. Then I actually forgave myself because I started to see my growth. And then I realized the more I hurted myself, the more I was mean to me, similar to what you just shared with your kids. I wasn't good for anybody. I wasn't. Mike Sykes with low self-esteem and low self-confidence creates more harm than a person with self-esteem and self-confidence, Mike Sykes. So I was like, I did it for them and I did it for me.
I'm going to take this question backwards. So I stayed in a lot of situations too long. They were painful situations, whether they were friendships, whether they were relationships, whatever type of ship. I've always been the person to stay in it too long because I didn't create healthy boundaries for the people that I surrounded myself with. I decided to throw all my so-called boundaries out the window and saying I'm going to take on your boundaries. I'm going to take on how you are, even though it pains me to stay in this situation, but I love you just that much. That ain't love. That is not love at all. If you can't love yourself enough to recognize, and I continue to see it as I'm on this healing journey, just recognizing that that wasn't love and just saying, I need to walk away. There comes a point in time in life where you just have to walk away from situations. And then there are times where you have lost the trust in that person, and the person has lost the trust in you. And trying to gain that trust back, sometimes the best way, and I'm talking to myself as I'm saying this, the best way to gain trust back is walking away. Walking away, you can gain that trust back within yourself. You can gain back your self confidence, like Micah said, your worthiness that you are loved, and that no matter what it looks like, no matter what it seems like, it's painful in the beginning. It really is. But building better bonds and better boundaries will create a better you for you to rebuild trust within yourself and with other people, and the pain won't be as painful the next go around.
Yes, Ruth, that was amazing. Oof. I think a big so like rebuilding trust within yourself I am a very goal-oriented person. When I want to rebuild trust in myself, I keep the promises I make to myself. When I am going through a bad situation, if I'm working a bad job, I will put in my calendar, by this date, you will have a new job. And when I put it down and I write it down, I manifest that, literally, my life changes so that new job comes my way, so that I take that opportunity and I keep the promise to myself and I take it. I don't sit in it. When I want to trust myself, I keep promises to myself. A big lesson I remember learning in law school, I had a professor, and she said a way to how she navigated her career was she did this was called like happiness challenge. So she would set a date, a month in the calendar, and it would pop up on her work calendar, phone calendar, everything. And it would ask her, "Are you happy?" And if she answered no to that question, then she promised herself she would make a change so that she could be happy. And I incorporated the same thing in my life. My happiness month is in October. And I'll tell you this, my life changes every October. Okay. One thing I do so that I can continue to trust myself and trust that I can accomplish things in my life is that I keep my promises. And we have to do that, because if you don't do that, when you break promises with yourself, nothing changes. You don't go where you were supposed to go.